think you put together an awesome panel tonight. I was like on the edge of my seat, truly on the edge of my seat tonight listening to you guys talk. I wanted to ask a question. So I've lived in Baltimore for 4 years now, and I've seen a failing cities. No offense, teachers or anything in the city here, but it seems to be a failing city school system. And I'm 27. I'm kind of going through that shift that Dave pointed out. I was going to bring it up, had he not. Definitely starting a family here soon. Questioning, can I live in the city, stay in the city, and enjoy the benefits of the city, and still provide my children education? So I think there's a combination of taking a lot of different thoughts tonight about creating businesses that can better education as a whole, or just getting involved in the curriculum yourself, bringing all that together to better the system. And I'm curious as to find, what specific does Baltimore already have, the benefits we already have here that we can tap into and become kind of this first city or one of the pioneering cities that take advantage of one small direction. It doesn't have to be the biggest change, but a change. And, in a quest to kind of understand as an entrepreneur myself and working in technology, opportunities for myself, I've noticed that this area has one of the biggest carrots in front of us in terms of kind of VC funds and stuff that are targeted for education. And, I'm surprised that it's not more pronounced and obvious to technology entrepreneurs, or just entrepreneurs in general, that there is opportunity here to re-engineer and reconfigure some of the systems that are already in place by creating new businesses like what they've done, what you've done, Tom, with Little Rooms and stuff. So, if I could just ask you guys maybe to each touch on one thing that you're in the back of your mind about what could Baltimore be doing tomorrow, or looking forward to, entrepreneurs or technologists or teachers or whatever, to put Baltimore on the map as a city that is fixing its own education problems.
I'll start. I would say that the number one thing that we could do here is make the connections between the creative capacity and the professionalism of the institutions and creative class that exist here in the city already, between Johns Hopkins Medical and the University of Maryland, between the incredible arts community in the city, the design community in the city, and what's going on in technology. And we need to make those connections happen. We need to let people know that Baltimore is, from my perspective, Baltimore is not a place where things could happen. It's literally the hub of this kind of thought. We have to make that next step. That next step is everything. It's all about relationships, all about connections, and all about connecting those kids and those teachers into sustainable relationships with real leaders and innovators within the community.
Second that, and perhaps suggest what the next step of that is, which is, I mentioned I'm having a conversation with some folks. This is a committee of Greater Baltimore Committees. So, Greater Baltimore Committee is sort of old school, and we all know some of its strengths and failings. But at the same time, if you get the right people involved, magic can occur. I'm working with Tom Loveland, who many of you know is the CEO of Mind Over Machines. Carl Gunto, who's the CEO of Cyberpoint Solutions, which is a good size now, 2-year-old cyber consulting company over in, I guess, Pier 5 area, by power plant. And also president of Harbor East. And Harbor East, if you don't know, pretty much owns all the land between Broadway and Central. So what we're talking about doing is putting together like a joint venture between some of the universities in town, and this is totally just blue sky discussion right now, but there's a thought to get Hopkins and Micah, or maybe some of the other schools, whatever makes sense, to marry together, do some kind of a tech shop initiative in the Harbor East /Fell/Canton kind of zone, and actually get like a tech entrepreneurship, creative something, business designation going in that geography. And there's a lot of reasons why that particular geography and why these particular people are involved in that discussion, which I can tell you more about offline. But the idea is to actually try to make that connection as some initial first step. And what we're really talking about with that is not just to have some little techie hangout or anything like that. This is the beginning of an engine for what could be the resurgence of manufacturing in Baltimore. Now, I don't say that lightly because we're never going to get to the point where we can make things at scale the way that you can in China in terms of per unit cost or whatever. When you think about things like quality or design uniqueness or speed to market, you know, we're sitting here on the edge of one of the biggest metro markets in the world. If you consider, like, say, DC to Boston as your overnight market, you know, here in town. We could do amazing things with fashion. We could do amazing things with manufacturing and rapid prototyping. And we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's possible with that, especially if you were to integrate and start to build bridges between the tech community, the entrepreneurial community, and the creative community. So that's certainly my goal. I know Andrew and Mike and many other folks here in the room share that as a goal, and I think you're going to be seeing the beginnings of that start to happen over the next 12 to 18 months.
So just as Dugiamas took that classroom and asked people, what should a classroom be like? I think that's making the connections, you know, it doesn't, you know, we were all around the world, you know, we're talking about people all around the city. But the conversation we want to have is, what do we want? Right? And I think all of the great ideas are going to come from the classrooms. I think the teachers know what they want, or they feel what they want, and when they talk to others, they'll know what they want more. And so as long as you've got the connectivity to hear that, to honor that, you know, to help shape that, you've got a good thing going. The city is fantastic, actually, about you know, the incubator I mentioned. You know, I was a poetry major, you know, in college, and you know, clearly going through learning to do elevator pitches, learning to do, you know, the budget models, the finance. You know, I learned so much during that process, and it was funded, you know, by the city and by the state. And one of our main investors was the city of Baltimore, or the state of Maryland. So you know, I think that the groundwork is right in this place at this time, as long as the people that are making the educational, you know, wish list are the teachers.
I think I'll also chime in and just say one or two things. As a classroom teacher in the inner city, I think when you have a system that people don't hold any sort of misconceptions about whether it has problems or not, they're willing to accept and work on them. Because if you have a system that people are like, okay, it works, then they're not going to tinker with it. But there's so much opportunity here in the city right now. And I really feel that, especially with the landmark new contract that was passed last year. And the real goal of that is to have teachers stay longer. Because in the inner city, it is really difficult to have a lot of teacher turnover. But all these things we've been talking about take time. And if your teacher is still in their first year, second year, even third year, where I still am, I'm just now beginning to feel like I can make real life connections outside the classroom in a way that is meaningful, and I'm not stressing as much about, you know, the mechanics of teaching as much about the actual connections that kids are making to the real world. So I think getting teachers to stay longer in the classroom is a huge component in that. Because as they make the connections with the industry, they can start to open up their classroom in ways that you can't in your first year unless you have an amazing support system. So I think that's one major component, is getting teachers in the classroom for longer periods of time. And then going along with that is all these connectivity issues, where empowering the teachers so that they are finding others to make connections with and learn from constantly, not waiting for PD, but going to it. That sort of teacher empowerment through these social media outlets. There was another question there.